Morning, friends. Welcome to Rooted. This morning we're going to continue with episode 2 of Charles Spurgeon's Lectures to My Students, The Call to Ministry. Let's jump right in. The minister's calling. Spurgeon felt that women's public teaching was strictly prohibited. The minister was expected to dedicate his entire life to the ministry and separate it from his secular vocation. The minister was to cast himself on the church where applicable, because Spurgeon felt that he gave all of his energies to the congregation. Not everyone was called to be an elder or a minister, Spurgeon felt. They had to wait for a call from above. If God did not send them, then they will not profit the people. They cannot preach if they are not sent by God. Just as Isaiah was commissioned, so Spurgeon felt that God will commission his ministers. They will be moved by the Holy Spirit to fully preach the entire gospel. It will be a gift as well as a calling. It is only reserved for a small number of people, Spurgeon felt. And as ambassadors are appointed to represent a country, as mentioned, so Spurgeon felt the ministers will represent God in ministry. God has bestowed on some men the position of God bestows on men the position of ministers. It's not something that is self-appointed by people or by structures. You cannot self-elevate them to the position of ministers. It's a divinely appointed. It's a position that the person is divinely appointed to by God. Ministry is received from the Lord, as Spurgeon mentioned, and the Lord will set up these shepherds over his sheep. These watchmen will never ever hold their peace, but they will continue to speak the truth. The minister's calling continued. Spurgeon felt that the reason why there's hundreds of decaying churches or ministries was because the minister assumed that he was divinely called to be that minister in that ministry. Wrongly assumed a divine calling. Spurgeon said that ministers should really do an internal examination to really determine if they are called for ministry, and this must be undertaken with a lot of skepticism. They should not enter ministry until they have fully trialed themselves. Spurgeon said that the minister must be born again, and secondly, he must be appointed to this position by God. What are the signs of a divine calling? What are the internal signs of a divine calling according to Spurgeon? A burning, intense desire for this work, unquenchable, unending. Spurgeon said that you should not enter ministry if you can help it. If any amount of wealth or any amount of value or treasure can persuade you otherwise, that person should not enter ministry. The word of God must be a fire to the pastor or the preacher's bones. There must be a love for this calling. Spurgeon said because of the work that will be done in the trenches, in the mud, in the cold, in the trenches. That's why there should be a love for this work. It should be a heart's decision and our highest aspirations. It should be the highest aspirations of the minister. The minister should count the cost before entering ministry, and they should not mistake a whim or a childish aspiration or anything similar to that as a call. What are the divine items or the divine signs of a calling that are internal? The minister should fully examine himself, and he will find that if he has this divine calling, there will be a yearning that is inescapable for him to do this work. Spurgeon said that as the minister grows older, this intense yearning will grow more intense. It's the fire in a pastor's bones that Spurgeon referred to, and he said it's so profound that he also felt that if he doesn't feel it anymore, he would actually leave his ministry. What are the external signs of a divine calling? Spurgeon felt that there must be some aptness, astuteness, some ability to teach others. These are some of the required qualities needed for a pastor, a preacher, or a minister. He said that the first sermon will not necessarily be on the same standard as Wesley or as Spurgeon himself, but they will improve in later years. A man that is called will have some degree of speaking ability, according to Spurgeon. It would not be necessarily that there is no speaking ability, but there will be some astuteness, some aptness. And this he will cultivate and increase over time. Spurgeon said, if it's not there initially, it doesn't mean to say that it will never be there. But these trials that the person will go through, the minister will go through, will show his deficiencies and show him if he does not have the ability. During this period, you really must strive to edify others with his preaching. Signs of a divine calling externally. Spurgeon said and made this very, very, very interesting statement, that the opinion of ministers of their own preaching is poor. You cannot judge your own preaching. It's important to take a friend along, to ask a trusted friend to give you truth, constructive criticism for you to improve. Spurgeon said that even in the pastor's college, between the students and himself, they could discern which one of the students were not necessarily cut out for ministry. There must be some aptness, ability to edify the congregation. That's a prerequisite. The minister must have sound judgment, gentle manners, affection, firmness, courage, sympathy. All of these are traits that the minister should have. He must be able to lead, and grace in him must abound more than everybody else in the congregation. He must be a father and a counselor. Spurgeon said it's important to read the qualifications of a bishop in 1 Timothy 3 verse 2 to 7 and Titus 1 verse 6 to 9. And if they are not there, that person can become an evangelist, but not necessarily a minister. Results. Spurgeon felt that there must be some results under the specific person's ministry. It must become apparent. Hearts must be broken. Tears must be seen streaming down the congregation's cheeks. There must be changes of heart. Spurgeon said that he never felt so much joy for doing this work, because he knew in generations to come he will be called a blessed man. And wasn't he called, and isn't he called a blessed man? He really believed that there must be some form of conversion, some form of impact. The minister cannot continue to preach if there's no impact or no change of hearts or no conversion in his congregation. Vain are the aptitudes, the talents, the orthodoxy, the oration, if there's no conversion. Surely there will be times where conversions are little or not even taking place. But he said if God grants a person no zeal for souls, then that person must keep to his secular vocation. Edification of the congregation, very important. The preaching must be acceptable to the people of God or the assembly of God. If they are not edified, that pastor is not from God. Nobody can pastor or minister to his flock without the consent of God's people. Spurgeon made this very, very interesting comment again. As surely as the man wants his hour, so surely the hour wants its man. The minister must be fit for his work, and if he is fit for his work, he will never be without it. Interestingly, he said, do not invite yourself to preach, but be more concerned about your ability than the opportunity. And lastly, most important, ensure that you walk with God. He referred to a letter written by John Newton to one of John Newton's friends about what was and what was not proper to call, what was not a proper call to ministry. He outlines 3 important points. Number 1, a fervent desire to preach is most prominent when we are at our lowest point at God's feet. A fervent desire to preach is most prominent when we are at our lowest point, at the feet of God. There must be some form of competency, ability, knowledge, and aptitude in utterances. And thirdly, he said, it is a divine calling by the providence of God. A divine calling by a gradual train of circumstances, pointing to the means, the times, the place of that person actually going and entering the work in the ministry. It provides some cautions to ministers not to have any selfish ambitions in the pulpit. There are men that are greatly distinguished, geniuses, that elevate themselves above the ordinary people in the congregation. They are so clever. They are better than everybody else. Then there are men that are intellectually and morally weak, and they tend to run after very strange doctrines. Ministers should be able to embrace hardness. The ministry requires soldiers, not fops. Very interesting statement. The ministry requires soldiers, not fops. These men do not wait to be trained, but they start with the work of the Lord immediately. Then there are also good men, earnest men that toil and moan and are busy, but there's no real impact. Another type of man wants to enter ministry, but he's not necessarily sure why. And lastly, these men, they cannot teach if they are not prepared to learn. The minister's appearance, there must be some physical appearances and features of men that provide them with the ability to enter ministry. They must be, Spurgeon mentioned that they must have very large lungs to be able to speak clearly and concisely. These are the physical experiences or physical appearances that Spurgeon referred to. These should not be men that are failing at any and everything else, and then seeing that as a divine providence or calling from God to enter ministry. The ministry needs the very best of men, and not those who can do nothing else. Anyone who succeeds in ministry will be able to succeed in any other vocation, secular vocation. Then there are men that he referred to as men that are so splendidly trained, that provide so amazing answers to everything, and they are so clever that they actually annoy everybody else. Before entering the ministry, the ministers must have made up their mind about their doctrines. They cannot flip-flop while they are in ministry. There must be moral and spiritual fitness, because they will be tried. And experience will be the pastor or the minister's and students' truest test. The minister will experience weariness, hardships, scouring, and will be treated as nothing. Enduring these really show the qualities that is needed for a true servant of God. You will have many trials, and Spurgeon referred to, make sure that you are able as a minister to run with the horsemen and not already be wearied by the footmen. So to summarize, the minister's calling, signs of divine calling are internal as well as external. There should be some form of conversion under the person's ministry. They should edify the congregation, and there should be results of that. There are some cautions to not be overly clever in some instances. And then the appearance and other factors also will contribute to the ministry. Thanks everybody. Please like and subscribe, and drop me a message in the comments if you want more of these videos. Until we meet each other again next time, bye bye.